Hi, I'm Alex Howard, and I'm here with Sarah Marshall from the psychology team at the clinic. And this video is in our series around real-life cases of people we've treated, and really to demonstrate how we work with patients, how we integrate things like the different stages, the different subtypes, different departments in the clinic, really just to be able to give people a bit more of an understanding of the way that we work. So I know you've got a case study today.
Yeah.
Where I remember you saying that one of the key things was initially being able to stabilise the patient before we went off into other treatments that you were doing.
Yeah, sure. So shall I just do a bit of a background as a beginning? So this patient came to me after they'd crashed. They crashed a couple of times, and they were very much in the wired-tired or tired-wired stage. The run up to them getting ill, they were very busy, they were pushing, there was very much the achiever patterns going on, but also the helper patterns. Her initial symptoms were anxiety and panic, so that was very much about kind of where she was and what she was experiencing. She'd also experienced some trauma due to a close bereavement as well, so there was some trauma type in there as well.
And she was at what kind of level in terms of what she could do and what she couldn't do?
She was improving when she came to me, but she was very much kind of going from tired wired stage to the adaptation stage and then getting quite scared and going back into tired wired. So she was able to do some things, but not very much. So she was able to look after herself. I think she was doing maybe 1 hour of voluntary work a week, and that was it.
So it sounds like one of those cases that I think we see quite often where people are very gradually improving. You know, they've stopped the massive crashes, but there seems to be a kind of glass ceiling which they're kind of gradually pushing up, but it's kind of a very slow process.
So where we started was really looking at stabilization. So we're really looking at stabilizing her at a baseline that was manageable for her, so we could start helping her to manage her anxiety and panic, and that's what we started looking at. We looked at her pushing pattern through the achiever type, and we really helped her to back off those. It was very much about stabilisation and getting a good solid baseline before we did anything else.
And I guess maybe it's worth explaining why stabilisation is important, because I know that a lot of people come in just wanting to kind of, to do all the treatments that are going to have, the big impacts and the kind of the big kind of turnaround, but often it's really important to stabilise people first. So why do you find that to be important?
Because the maladaptive stress response is the thing that we see the most in our patients, it's very important that we help people to really step out of that. And because we see a lot of people with achiever patterns, then pushing is very much achieving. So we're looking at completely turning that around, but also giving the body some time and some space to start healing. And not using up the little energy that we do have through the pushing and a lot of the anxiety. So by stepping back and stabilising, it starts to give the person and their body a really good solid baseline to start building from once they have really worked with their stress response.
Yeah, and I guess that's one of the things, especially when with the psychology team, they're getting things like pacing, getting things like routine, getting all of that balance first. And I know that nutrition team also do some work with that as well, but it's almost like if you're going to kind of take a leap forward, you've got to build a platform to move from, because otherwise what we see with patients is that they kind of hear, they go up, they crash, and it's just kind of all over the place. And I know that then sets the foundation for the next kind of piece of work, which it sounds like was around the bereavement and that kind of thing.
It was. We then looked at the bereavement. So once you had a solid baseline, as you said, if we work through kind of bereavement or any type of trauma, it does have an impact on the body because we start to get in touch with the emotions, and that in itself can lead to some emotional tiredness. So to have that good baseline, it gave us a really solid place to start working through some of the emotions that she was stuck in, and to process some of the kind of the thoughts and what this meant for her.
It's a really good example of why working with the stages in the way that we do is so important, because if you do that emotional work without the foundation, a lot of stuff can come up. And firstly, I think if you do emotional work without doing stabilising first, it comes up a lot more intensely because your system's
Yeah.
already adrenalized.
Yeah.
So you push the emotions into that and they actually become more extreme than they otherwise need to be. But also it can then, if we don't do it in the right way, it can then lead to people overdoing it, to crashing, to having more anxiety and that kind of thing.
It just destabilises a very unstable system doing it in that way, as you said.
But equally, working with the emotions is also really important,
Yeah.
it sounds like, especially in this situation, to be able to move forward.
It is. And it's different in each person's case. I mean, in this person's case, stabilisation was very much what we needed to do first and work on the maladaptive stress response. But for some people, and if there's a lot of emotional stuff going on, then we need to work with that as part of the stabilisation. But we work with what's going on now rather than digging through other stuff that may be contributing to it but are not so present in the moment.
Yeah.
So it is very different, but it is about when to do it, and which is why we look at these different stages. We need to tackle this at the right time.
Yeah, and I know there's a separate video on the website and the blog site around why working with emotions is important. But once you'd kind of worked with the bereavement side, what was the next kind of piece of work that you were doing with this patient?
Okay, well, once we'd got to that point, she found that her energy had started to return. So she was very much in kind of adaptation stage, because she was then quite frightened about what this will mean. She was frightened about going back into the booming and busting. Because of her achiever type, she was scared that she only knew how to push. That's how she knew how to live. So we very much looked at, as part of the reintegration stage, about changing her achiever patterns, how to live life but from a different place. So there is some pushing, as we know, because we need to push our boundaries. But it's about gentle pushing and pushing for a more solid and calm place rather than this achiever, I must.
I think this is what's one of the most, I think, difficult lessons for a lot of patients. I know that's something we do a lot of work with on the psychology side, is this people have pushed themselves to get ill, but then they almost develop a huge panic and anxiety in any situation they have to push themselves. And pushing the kind of, let's say, stage 1 is absolutely disastrous. But at reintegration stage, if it's done in an intelligent way, balancing the boundary, is actually really important.
Yeah.
And working through that, I know, can be a really, for patients, quite a complex thing, but obviously we have a lot of experience in the team with it.
Yeah, we focused on the emotions that came up, because obviously as we start to go back into the world again, there were reasons why we were stressed in the first place. So we looked at, okay, what is this reminding her of? We also looked at new strategies. Okay, how can you move out into the world again and manage it a lot more effectively? We also looked at what she wanted to do rather than what she felt she must do or have to do. It was what do you really want to do and how you're going to achieve that. So it was very much about looking at the future and how she's going to do things differently and what she actually wanted to do.
Yeah, well, I think often towards the end of recovery, it's finding a way to go back perhaps into the same world we were in before, but as a different person. Yeah. So we don't go back and recreate the same illness and the same results. So then at the end of treatment, just briefly, where did this patient get to in terms of their recovery and that kind of thing? She's
now doing very well. She's almost recovered, if not recovered, and is back in work. So yeah, she's doing really well.
And that was over what period of time, that treatment, roughly?
About 18 months.
Yeah, okay. I think that's also, again, it shows the spread of the work that often sometimes has to be done. And I think what's also important is people tend to hear, 18 months, my God, 18 months to get better. But I think what's really important is what we're really interested in at the clinic is not kind of instant overnight result, it's lasting recovery. And to get lasting recovery, often we have to do, different stages and different pieces of work. And for some people, it can be, a very quick thing. But I'm, just like with Secrets to Recovery, I'm much more interested in, I know we're more interested in the real stories rather than the kind of the miracle stories, because people, I think it's much more realistic. People understand, well, it makes sense if someone's been ill for a long time to have to work through these different pieces of the jigsaw.
I think what's worth noting as well, that we were progressing within those 18 months, although sometimes it felt she felt like she was going backwards, it's only because something else was coming up that we needed to work on.
Yeah.
But it's all about sustainable recovery, and there's lots of different reasons and predisposing factors of why we got ill, and for sustainable recovery those need addressing, and it takes time to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. Well, thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you for watching, and if you're already a patient, and hopefully this has been a useful way of understanding a bit more of the way that we work, and if not, and you're interested in finding out more, then you can get a free information pack and then a free 15-minute chat. That really your best starting points. So thanks for watching, and we look forward to talking with you again soon.